Hey everyone, this is Tony Maritato. I'm a licensed physical therapist and owner of Total Therapy Solutions. I'm here with Armando Cruz. Armando was actually part of my graduating physical therapy class, and now he's releasing a book, and we're going to get into a whole bunch of the stuff that Armando is doing. But he's a licensed physical therapist living in South Florida. So Armando, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, kind of where you're from, and let us get to know you a little bit.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Tony. It's always a pleasure, like Tony mentioned, we went to school together. But I like to say I'm a connoisseur of experiences. That's kind of like my thing, is creating experiences both in my life, for my family, and then for my clients. And so with that brings, I'm a husband, a father. I am an adventurer, as we can talk about a few of the things that we got planned in there. An ultramarathoner. And now best-selling author. So that in a nutshell kind of encompasses everything that I feel that I am. I feel by nature I'm a creator, someone who likes to take nothing and just expand on a vision that comes and bring it to reality. And so that happens in many different arenas, whether it's artistic, physical, emotional, all these different realms that I can help both teach my kids, but also my clients as well. Born and raised in South Florida. My parents are Cuban, came over young, and South Florida is pretty big, so I'll even narrow it down. I'm in South Miami, so not just Miami, but in South Miami, and it is one of those things that Miami is a very polarizing city. You love it or you hate it, and I think, Tony, you felt the polarization every time you would come down during school. But for me, I traveled all around the U.S. searching for what I thought was the ideal place for me to live. And what I found out after 3 months of running all the national parks all around the U.S. and living out of my car, when I came back, I found, no, this is home. This is home. This is where I belong, at least for right now. And I've been here ever since.
Yeah. Now, we were in physical therapy school together in 2003, 4, and 5. What'd you do before that?
I did my bachelor's in exercise and sports science at FIU and Florida International University. And then I was working primarily as a personal trainer. And the funny thing was that the reason that I left around the U.S. was because originally what I wanted to do was exercise physiology. And my undergrad was in athletic training. And originally what I was going to do was I wanted to do my master's in UNC Chapel Hill. What I didn't know was that Prentice, the guy who writes a lot of the books for athletic training, is a professor there. And it's one of the most difficult athletic training programs to get to. Fast forward, what was happening there was that there were a lot of people trying to get into athletic training and they were getting rejected. So they figured out the workaround was apply for exercise physiology. Once you're in the school, you transfer over to, once you're in, they would transfer over to athletic training. So what happens when they see my background, they see my recommendations, which was like, Armando's an amazing athletic trainer. He's going to do all this stuff. They're like, oh, this guy's trying to do the same thing. So I got rejected. And I say this not out of speculation, because I actually called, because I had a 3.9. I had phenomenal recommendations. Like, I had the hours, I had the skill set. And I was like, there's no way I can't. I graduated in 3 years, my undergrad.
Yeah.
Because I was excited to get going. And I remember getting that call, that letter, and I was destroyed. And then when I called and I said, I don't understand. Why is this happening? I thought I fulfilled everything that you needed. And then that's when the lady told me that. And I was like, you don't think somebody could have called and asked? Because, to me, my life was over at that point. I was like, man, everything I worked for was completely out the window. And I started feeling like a lot of anger and resentment. And I was like, man, like this hard work stuff that everyone said is what's going to get you far doesn't make sense if, you know, it's hanging in the balance of misunderstanding.
Right.
Which then that kind of led me down that path. And I said, you know what? I got to get out of here. And I called up a friend of mine and I said, hey, this is my plan. I'm going with or without you, but I thought I'd invite you. He ended up going. He was a runner there at FIU as well, since I ran at FIU. And we went for 3 months running all the national parks all around the US, and then came back. And when I got back, I was working at the NASDAQ, the big tennis tournament.
Yeah.
And I was in charge of the strength and conditioning room there. And I met a physical therapist there. And we were talking, and I told him that I wanted to do exercise physiology. And he's like, well, you like the rehab stuff. You're good at it. Why not do physical therapy and actually have more leverage? If you wanted to take insurance, you could, like, you'll be more marketable than an exercise physiologist.
Sure.
And after thinking about it, I said, okay, great, let's do it. And that actually is why I ended up going, because of his recommendation and our conversation. That's how I ended up in physical therapy school.
And so then you graduated in 2005.
Right.
You and I reconnected really like this past year, 2017. So tell me about building your practice, what you've been doing between then. And then I cannot wait to hear you shared a little bit of the story, but I love the story about this book and the new program that you're doing. So tell me what happened between 2005-06 into 2017.
Sure. So what's funny is that what originally started off as getting more marketable and, you know, with the idea of, being able to take insurance, as I went through school, I realized there was no way that I wanted insurance. I didn't want to have to deal with that. I knew very quickly that I wanted to be doing my own stuff. I was working as a personal trainer with my own little twist. I was always the most expensive trainer. So I really valued quality over just volume. I figured out ways to leverage my services and my unique abilities and kind of how to position it in a way so that the values is even that much more.
Yeah.
And so when once I graduated, I started again raising my prices and then started kind of really shifting or merging the personal training realm with the physical therapy, because physical therapists don't do a good job at selling.
Sure.
At least not in my experience. And then, you know, as a personal trainer, you have to be selling yourself all the time.
Right.
Especially if you're getting private clients. And if you don't produce, they fire you. Whereas physical therapy, even if you don't produce, it's like, the insurance will pay for this or they don't.
Yeah.
And I really didn't like that model. I really resonated with the pay for performance. And I think one of the things that's really important as I say that, if you're a physical therapist, it's because you want to serve people. So it's not that you're not trying to serve them, but if it's not getting results and you're paying privately, people are going to fire you.
Right.
But on the flip side, if you're doing insurance, you're willing to stick it out because the insurance pays for it. I had a guy, I had a guy 3 weeks ago, referred from someone else, was a runner, has been having pain and hasn't been able to run for 4 months.
Okay.
And he's been suffering. He tells me he's been going to physical therapy. And I'm like, listen, you know, the guy that referred him had been having back pain for 4 years.
Wow.
Hadn't been able to run. And in one session, I eliminated the pain and he ran. And he's been running every single day, and I've only seen him 4 times.
Wow.
So this guy refers him and he says, hey, you know, this guy will change your life. Go see him. And the guy eventually, like, we have a conversation. We go to schedule the next appointment. And he sends me a text. He's like, listen, you know, right now I think this is too expensive. I'm going to continue going to, this is what he says in the text, I'm going to continue going to the physical therapy until my sessions are over, even though I know it's not working. even though I know it's not working. How
Yeah.
doesn't that like blow your mind?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that to me, I didn't want to have to deal with that. I really wanted to, put, I realized that I work well when I'm in true, genuine authenticity. And the way that I feel I'm in most authentic is when I know that I'm delivering what I say I am. And so
Right.
one of the things that I did really early on is I offered a guarantee. It didn't start this way, but now it's, I'll fix you in 5 sessions or less, or you get your money back.
Uh-huh.
Nobody does that. Nobody has, not that I've seen, that has that money back guarantee if you're not pain free in 5 sessions or less.
Well, I'll tell you, I would say, yeah, nobody has that same guarantee. And there are a couple other guys and girls in the cash-based physical therapy world that are doing similar. Um, and that's the thing. I think that's what's so vital is that you could waste 3 months going to an in-network provider with no guarantee, having no idea who you're seeing, maybe seeing a different therapist every single time. Or you can put the time, the effort, the commitment in, make the promise to yourself as the patient to say, look, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get past this, and find a real professional like yourself who is so vested in the patient's success that you're willing to say, look, I'll give you that money back guarantee because I don't want your money if I can't make you better.
Right.
And that's basically what you're saying to that person.
Right.
Whereas they could just throw the insurance money into the trash if they don't get better going to someplace else.
Right.
You stand behind your promise. And I think that's so great. And I think more healthcare needs to go that way so that we can really start to see some momentum and affect change in people's lives.
Right.
Now, what prompted you to go from running your day-to-day business? Obviously, you're busy with your family, you're busy with all these other commitments, and decide, hey, you know what? I don't have enough on my plate. I'm being sarcastic, and I need to write a book. So tell me about that.
Gotcha. So maybe 4 years, I hit a really dark place. There was a point where I said, I don't know, there was something off mentally where I felt like I wanted to help people on a deeper level. And I kind of felt trapped by the way the business was set up. In other words, people would only see me as a trainer or a therapist, and they were missing a lot more of the deeper work that I wanted to be doing with them.
Right.
Because they didn't come for that. So
Sure.
mentally, it was hard to conceive. And it got me to a place where I literally wanted to burn my business down. There was nothing wrong with my clients, by the way. It was just mentally me. I felt trapped. I don't know if anyone, as you're listening to this, have ever gotten to a point to your life where you feel trapped, or you get to a point where you're like, is that all there is?
Right.
And I came to those crossroads. And what made it worse was I felt guilty for it, because from the outside, I have this business that's successful. I get to spend as much time with my family as I want. We all have good health. My wife and I, we have a house. We have a car, like normal cars. We don't have Ferraris or anything like that. Just dependable cars, right?
Sure.
So everything from the outside would say, like, why are you not happy? Like, why aren't you satisfied? And to me, that was a really rough question, because I said, I should be. Why am I not? Like, why do I feel this inclination that I want to do more when
Right.
this is good and it's
Right.
really helping people? Fast forward, what basically happened, I almost bankrupted the business. My wife is pregnant with our 3rd child,
Wow.
and I can't seem to put things together. And it's that feeling of hopelessness. I don't know if you've ever been in a point like that, as you're listening to this, where you feel hopeless. I was feeling hopeless. I was feeling so uncertain about my future and what I really wanted to do and how I really wanted to continue to help. And on the other end, I had my wife was pregnant with our 3rd child. We were now going into debt big time because we weren't producing. And around that time, one of my mentors reached out to me and said, hey, I'm going to be doing this retreat in Thailand. I think you would really benefit from it. And after we talked about it and kind of ran through some of that, I felt like, man, I think this is where I need to go.
Right.
But what's the problem? What's the problem with that? The retreat is during the same time that my son could be born.
Oh.
I can't afford it. And I'd be taking away 12 days. I'd be gone for 12 days, halfway across the world.
Uh-huh.
So if anything happened, it doesn't matter how in a hurry I was, it would take at least a day to come back, at least. So I talked to my wife and I said, listen, this is what we have. This is where I'm at. And she looked at me and she said, do you think this is what you need to kind of get out? And I said, yeah, I mean, this is the only thing I can think of that. And the only thing I feel congruent, because this is somebody that I trusted and I've worked with in the past that I felt really moved me along the line in a powerful way. And she looked at me and she said, you know, to me, probably one of the most courageous things, you know, you have kids. I bet, you know, like when your wife is pregnant, like you can get swings from up and down with hormones and stuff like that. So for her to have the lucidity to be able to look at me, and the courage is what I say, and say, listen, if you think that this is what you need, like this is what's going to get you out, this is what you need to do. Because I can't help you anymore. I don't know what else to do. And at this point, you need to do this for us. Because I need you to be the man, the husband, the father that I know you to be. And whether you like it or not, this baby's coming.
Yeah.
And I would rather you miss the birth than miss the rest of his life because you're in a completely bad place.
Sure.
And that was like, to me, you know, talk about a gut check for her to have that kind of courage to say that, even though we couldn't afford it, even though I could have missed so she would have been by herself.
Yeah.
That was one of those moments where we have these inflection points, these crossroads in our life. That was one of them for me that shifted the course of my entire life. When she said that, and then going through, finally figured out a way to pay for it, flew out to Thailand, gained the clarity. I realized that there was nothing wrong with my business. In fact, it was something that was so in alignment with what I do and who I am that I realized that I need to embrace it even that much more and go even 100 times more in. But then I had the opportunity of space there where I got to reflect and say, I'm not the only one going through this. There are other men that are married, that are entrepreneurs, that are trying to juggle this thing called work-life balance, which is a bunch of crap. You know, we can talk about that if you want, but and what would I have wanted? What is the process that helped me that I wish I had? And so I set out to create that. And while I was there, I created an immersive coaching program called the R.I.C.H Man Experience. And R.I.C.H is an acronym for a values system that you can use as a compass to help you decide whether or not you should be doing things or how to decide what you want to do. In other words, it's a compass to help you understand whether you're in alignment with your true values. And so R.I.C.H stands for respected, inspired, connected, and happy. And that was kind of like the birth of a new business for me, where I was serving growth-minded men. Usually they were entrepreneurs or CEOs that were married, and helping them show up more powerfully in their marriage, in their health, in their business, and creating the kind of impact, which in turn creating the legacy that they wanted to leave. And after doing that for 4 years, I realized, well, number one, not everybody can afford coaching.
Right.
And number two, not everyone is at that point, right? So you have different levels of commitment, focus, bandwidth. Not everyone's ready to go into that. Because it demands a lot of commitment financially and energetically to immerse yourself in that. And I said, you know what? This is information that everyone needs to have. And that's when I decided to write this book. That was December of 2016 that I decided.
Okay.
And it ended up taking me a year to finish writing the book and getting it published.
Wow.
A little bit less than a year, less
Yeah.
than a year. But even in that process, there was a lot of resistance. I started off strong, all excited, and then, you know, I started because of ignorance. Because if I knew the amount of work going into it, I don't know if I would have taken it on. In my head, I started in January and I was going to have it published at the same time I was doing what I call the Modern Man Virtual Summit, where I gathered 20 speakers, authors, experts from across the world in March and did a virtual summit for men.
Wow.
In my head, I was going to have it published and ready to share with everybody there in March. In 3 months, write it, edit it, and have it out. Like, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
When that didn't happen, I kept pushing it back. I kept pushing and procrastinating. And I was reading this book called Resisting Happiness.
Uh-huh.
And page 3 in that book talks about resistance. And, you know, there's another book that's probably one of the most influential books, which is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Love it. He talks about resistance. But in this book, this guy has published like 12 books. And he says, you know, people come to me all the time and say, I have this great idea for this book, and I want you to be able to publish it for me, and I want you to do all that stuff. And he said, the thing is, I always tell them, I said, put together the manuscript and let me see it, and we'll talk about it.
Uh-huh.
Nobody ever gets back to me.
Right.
And at that moment, it was like somebody kicked me in the gut. You know, I'm sure everyone at some point has felt that, oh, that, man, they're talking to me.
Yeah.
They're talking to me like, I better get my act together.
Right.
That day, it was in July. I took out 3 $100 bills. I'd never forget. And I posted it on my kitchen counter, and I took a picture. And I realized how important this message is. This wasn't about writing the book. This was about sharing the message that I had to share. And I said, this is that important to me. And I put up and I said, listen, this is why this is so important to me. And I'm committing to having the manuscript done and handed into the editor in 10 days. And what I want you to do, I posted this on Facebook, is put a comment below. And anyone who comments below, I'm going to send you $100 if I don't fulfill in 10 days.
Wow.
In 2 days, I was in the hole for $9,000.
Wow.
Right? By the way, I got it in place. You know, I got it in. And let me backtrack because I always forget to tell this part. When I got back from Thailand, I did not miss the birth of my child. He was born 3 days later. So that all worked out.
I was absolutely going to ask you about that. It sounded like you made it back, but I wasn't sure.
Yes, I did not miss it. It all worked out for the good.
Wow.
So that's kind of my story.
I think so many of us can relate to that story. And when you first talked to me about it a little bit, I said, yeah, you know, absolutely. Like, anyone who is creative, you're constantly trying to improve. You're constantly pushing yourself. Like, you go through these phases in life where it's one thing or the other, but you're always working to improve yourself, improve your family, improve your surroundings. And you hit a wall at some point where, like, I just can't do it anymore. And, you know, whether you call it burnout, whether you call it a midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think we can all relate, or at least anybody who is constantly striving to be better in some capacity can absolutely relate to that, you know. And I love to hear the stories about the people who have taken that and instead of allowing it to ruin their life. I mean, you hear the story about the man or the woman who has that epiphany, but it turns into, you know, they have an affair, or they do bankrupt their business, or they buy a Ferrari, or they, you know, you took that and you turned it into something great. So now tell me a little bit about the book. The book has been released. How can people find out about it? What's the best way for them to get started? First reading the book and then getting a hold of you.
Sure. So the book is called The Legacy Code, Modern Man's Guide to Escape Obscurity and Live a Life Unleashed. So It was very important to me. So two things. Number one, the book was written for men.
Uh-huh.
I purposely wrote it for men because there's a lot of resources for women. There's a lot of talk about women. Men have traditionally just kind of done their thing. And I think in today's day and age, more than ever, there is an attack on the male. There is an attack on men. And what's happening is that most men are actually hiding instead of stepping up.
Right.
Not necessarily because they're weak or not necessarily because they don't know any other option. The intention of the book is to live a purposeful and powerful life and create that legacy that inspires them. Because one of the things that I share is that the life that you live is the legacy that you leave.
Uh-huh.
Right? So legacy, most people think about it as, oh, what's left at the end of your life. But what's left at the end of your life is a direct response to how you lived it.
Yeah.
And if you're not living it on purpose, if you're not very clear, you waste a lot of time. You waste a lot of opportunities that could have created more impact in people's lives, or that could have created something that for you is a lot more fulfilling than just going through the motions.
Yeah, I love that term legacy. I think of that all the time. I think, what legacy am I leaving for my boys, my family? You know, legacy, I think, is such a powerful word. And in the same way that we think of building our business and again, back to creativity. As a creative person, the legacy is the final thing that you've created for this world that would go on in perpetuity beyond your existence here on earth. And so I think that's just such a powerful word. I love the whole idea that you're putting together.
Right. And you know, in the book, one of the things that we talk about is the distinction between a personal legacy and an impact legacy. And
Uh-huh.
so in general, the personal legacy tends to go, you know, to use a little bit of a marketing term, an inch wide and a mile deep, versus the impact tends to focus more on mass. And
Okay.
so very often doesn't go as deep, but definitely goes wide. And
Yeah.
both, it's not choosing an either or, but it's balancing out, hey, who are the most important people to go deep with? And then as I want to continue impacting the lives of people, you know, how do I want to serve them on a grander scale? So it's going deep and going wide, but in different arenas.
Right. Well, that's awesome. So the book is on Amazon. Would you say that's the best way for people to get started?
Yeah, I would probably say they could find it on Amazon. Go to legacycodebook.com. It gives you context there. That's the official site for it. And it gives you a link there that you can purchase it there as well. Within that, there's also an opportunity to get some bonuses. One of the things we're doing is I'm giving away, when I did the Modern Man Virtual Summit, I'm giving away some of those interviews. And we haven't finished editing or shooting and editing it. But one of the things that we're in the process of doing is shooting a film, or not a film, like a video that my wife and I are going to be interviewed talking about the process, which I think could be very valuable, because people see the end result. They see the book and they're like, oh yeah, you know, he's got it all figured out. But there was a big process that had to go on in our marriage so that this could actually come through fruition. At the beginning, I didn't want to burden my wife with having to read it or do this. So
Right.
I actually excluded her. And I thought I was done with the book and I was going to hand it in to the editor, you know, in one of the drafts. I thought I was going to do like maybe 2 drafts. We did 12 drafts.
Wow.
But because of her, to
Right.
me, I was like, all right, good, I'm done. And she says, you're not going to let me read it? And at first I was like, I don't know. And then I don't want to like overwhelm you or like put more things on your plate. And she goes, no, I want to read this. And then at the beginning, when she gave me feedback, I had to, like, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was an ego thing. I was like, because it was an ego thing because I wanted it to be perfect for my wife. I wanted her to read it and say, wow, this was amazing. And what I came to realize was she saw how amazing it was and she wanted that to be communicated. It was
Right.
one of those things that what I thought I was saying and what I thought I was communicating wasn't as clear as I thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
So because she knew me, what I was trying to say, she's like, this is not saying that. This needs to be organized better so that it flows better. So she ended up being my editor and
Okay.
completely revamped it, not wrote it. She's like, hey, you say this. Can you give me an example? So she brought it to life. She said, this belongs in this section because of X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And
Right.
it flowed so much easier that I didn't know. I mean, the book is 214 pages, but when you get it on Kindle, it tells you how long it'll take to read it if you read it straight through. And it was like 2.5 hours. At first, I was a little bit like, man, that's it. I put a lot of work into this, 2.5 hours. But then I realized, I said, wow, that's a testament to the efficiency
Right.
of the process, that we could convey this in such a real way that it only takes 2 hours and 40 minutes. What's taken me, I'm 37 now. I'm going to be
Yeah.
38 in a few more weeks. What's taken me 38 years to kind of piece together.
Right.
And we were able to condense it into a raw and real 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Now, I tell you, I'm going to put you on the spot for this because I was just thinking about this. Have you ever considered reading the book, like doing, an audio version of it and you being the one reading it so that if you wanted to, you could add your commentary in there? Because I know so many of people are listening to books online and listening to podcasts and not necessarily able to sit down with, the actual hard copy.
Yeah.
Is that something you've ever considered?
Oh, 100%. That's on my bucket of things to do this year. That will get released this year. I haven't created the space because we're juggling a few other things first. But it will be done this year, the audiobook. I'm just sourcing out what's going to be better, whether or not to get the equipment to get a high quality thing and do it myself and then mentally have to expend that energy, or just say, you know what, let me outsource it. Let me walk into this area, read, walk out. They figure out all that stuff, which is where I'm leaning to. Because again, I got a million other things. The last thing I want to do is deal with tech stuff, which
Absolutely
is not the things that I love.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I am, and I want to read it. I wouldn't want somebody else to read it.
Right. Wow. Well, listen, I don't want to take up any more of your time. That is just such an inspiring story. I know of so many other clinicians, individuals, that can relate to that and grasp that and feel that either they're going through it right now or they went through it. And so I'm going to go ahead. I'll jump on and I'll share the website that you have. You mentioned a summit. Is that summit still available? Was it recorded and is it still available anywhere?
Yes, you can find that you can go to armandocruz.com, and there's a tab for the summit where you can purchase it. And maybe what I can do is I'm gonna, are you gonna put this up on a website or something?
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'm gonna create a coupon code. And anyone coming through here, I'll give them a discount on there. I'll figure it out. We can do a 15-20% discount.
That's great.
Just for the listeners here. I just haven't created it, so we'll come up with a coupon code. If you're listening to this, go to Tony's website and we'll have that ready for you so that you're free. It's over 20 hours worth of such a vast variety, from investing to health to family life to creating tribes so the gambit of personal health, business gets covered in there.
Right.
And it was a blast to put on. And I think, it's one of those things that it's a resource that everyone could massively benefit from.
Well, that's outstanding. Armando, thank you so much. You're my second official interview. I hope it went well. I enjoyed it. If nothing else, I took a ton of value out of your time. I think what you're doing is just tremendous, you know, to see where you were, where you've been, and where you are now. It's really exciting. You enjoy those 3 children. I know how challenging and how rewarding that can be, probably more than anything else that I do. But hey, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been a joy.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.